If you've turned on the mainstream media over the last few weeks, you would think that the world was coming to an end because of a little construction at the White House, some sports, and a wading pool. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow, the one and only truth hustler, bringing you a brutal display of logic and reason on a daily basis. Yeah, they're setting their hair on fire, practically. The left-wing media elite is having an absolute gold medal meltdown. And over what? Well, first, President Trump announces a major UFC event outside the White House. We talked about this in yesterday's video. Timed perfectly for his birthday celebration. Of course, that ticks a lot of people off. And then you have the upcoming 250th anniversary of our great country. The media is completely losing its mind. They're screaming about the, quote, desecration of sacred institutional grounds. Now they're looking for the high ground. Now they want to act like good things are good when they've ignored them for decades. We'll start first with Interior Secretary Doug Burgum fast-tracking a massive, long overdue cleanup and beautification of the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. They're lining it with a beautiful flag blue surface to stop decades of structural leaking. Remember, Obama spent $30 million trying to get this thing to just hold water, and it never held water. So far, they spent $14 million. It holds water. They just got to get their chemistry right. So what does the left do? Well, they cry about historical tampering. They act like treating our nation's capital with a shred of pride and keeping things clean is some kind of authoritarian overreach. The fake outrage is exhausting, but it's a hypocrisy that's downright brutal. You see, these are the same people who sat on their hands or outright cheered in many cases, while their own radical base spent the last several years systematically defacing, toppling, burning down actual history in the heart of Washington, D.C. And now they want to lecture us about the sanctity of D.C. monuments. Let's look at the actual tape, though. Let's look at the facts that they seem to want to forget. And what I'm mainly focusing on in this video is D.C. And I'll touch briefly on the whole country. But we're talking about D.C. because they're talking about D.C. Here are some things that maybe you might not remember that the left was proud to be a part of in defacing and vandalizing D.C. I picked 7 of the most egregious examples of left-wing political groups, anti-war activists, progressive politicians actively supporting or literally carrying out the actual desecration and removal of our history right there in Washington, D.C. Think back to the summer of 2020, June 19th. A lawless mob of left-wing activists marched into federal land at the Judiciary Square. Yeah, this was the summer of love. This was the George Floyd celebration. These people didn't vote. They didn't ask. They didn't care about the law in D.C. They wrapped ropes around the 11-foot bronze statue of Albert Pike, pulled it down to the ground, doused it in lighter fluid, and set it on fire. And what did the overwhelmingly Democratic D.C. City Council do? They didn't condemn the lawlessness. They'd been trying to get rid of it for years. So they just let it happen. They let the mob go to work. You know, because nothing says highly evolved political discourse quite like a bunch of adults in hoodies playing with matches on a Friday night on public land. Just 3 days later, same city, June 22nd, they took the fight directly to the White House's doorstep. A massive crowd converged on Lafayette Square, climbing the historic equestrian monument of Andrew Jackson. They spray-painted killer scum on the pedestal and tried to yank it down with ropes. The only reason the statue is still standing today is because federal law enforcement stepped in with pepper spray and batons to disperse the mob. Multiple left-wing radicals were federally charged, but the media painted them as passionate advocates. But hey, give them points for effort. Tearing down a 15-ton bronze horse with some rope from Home Depot takes a lot of progressive passion and zero understanding of basic physics, you bunch of dummies. That same month, progressive organizers set their sights on Lincoln Park in the Emancipation Memorial, a statue depicting Abraham Lincoln freeing a slave, which was originally funded entirely by the donations of newly freed Black Americans. The radical left declared it demeaning and threatened to tear it down by force. Local Democrat delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton immediately validated the mob, introducing a bill to legally remove it. The National Park Service had to throw up heavy steel security fencing just to protect Abraham Lincoln from the progressive left. I mean, you really have to admire the absolute galaxy brain logic it takes to look at a monument funded entirely by free slaves to honor Abraham Lincoln and think, yeah, let's smash that. Total stupidity. Fast forward to 2024. Thousands of left-wing pro-Palestinian and anti-war protesters swarmed D.C. They marched on Union Station, and what did they do to Christopher Columbus Plaza? They completely covered the historic fountain and statues in vile graffiti, anti-American, pro-Hamas slogans. They tore down the American flags flying outside the station, burned them on the pavement, and hoisted Palestinian flags in their place. National Park Service restoration teams had to use heavy chemical scrubs for days just to save the historic stone. But yeah, remember folks, hosting a sporting event near the White House is undignified. Spray painting pro-terrorist slogans on historic fountains and burning American flags at the train station? Oh, that's just vibrant, peaceful expression. First guys, check this out. You ready to run with the wolves? Meet Durya's Ran Iron Wolf rifle and the Ran X pistol, the ultimate fusion of classic lever action soul and modern tactical teeth. We're talking about massive 357, 44 Magnum, and 45 Long Colt power, bomb-proof, monoblock steel receivers, fully adjustable Iron Wolf stock and grip, M-lock everywhere, and threaded barrels to go with you know what. Of course, they're optics ready as well. Whether you want the full-size rifle or the hard-hitting 12-inch pistol, these beasts dominate hunting, home defense, and the range. Lifetime warranty, of course. You got to check this cool new stuff out from my friends Durya. They are banging out new stuff all the time. And if you think this behavior was in the more recent past, well, look what happened just this past month, May 1st. While contractors were working on the accelerated beautification project at the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, radical leftists snuck onto the site. They spray painted a massive 15 by 30 foot political slogan across the construction tarps. 8647. For those who don't know the slang, 86 means to eliminate or get rid of, and you know what that means. And 47, of course, refers to Donald Trump. The park police had to secure the area and cover it up immediately for chemical cleanup. And just days ago, June 11th, they struck again, right near the World War II memorial, visible from the live cameras on top of the Washington Monument. Authorities found a massive, deranged footprint. Someone had used toxic chemicals, probably like Roundup or something like that, to etch 8647 straight into the grass of the National Mall, killing a giant swath of the lawn right before the president's birthday event. The Interior Department rightly called it deranged vandalism, and the White House pointed out that this assassination culture stems from a severe, warped case of Trump derangement syndrome. Whatever it stems from, imagine being so utterly consumed by hate that you sneak onto the National Mall with a bottle of chemical weed killer just to pick a fight with the grass. Truly a masterclass in political resistance. And finally, it's not just the mobs on the street. It's the Democrats in suits also. On December 21st, 2020, under full compliance with a Democrat-controlled Virginia state government, the statue of Robert E. Lee was quietly scrubbed from the National Statuary Hall collection inside the U.S. Capitol. Combined with the Washington National Cathedral bowing to progressive pressure to rip out historic stained glass windows, the institutional left has spent years systematically erasing anything that they don't deem politically convenient. Because as we all know, if you just hide the statue in a basement and rip out the stained glass, history magically rewrites itself and everyone gets a participation trophy. Problem solved, right? Now, the media wants you to think that these were all isolated incidents, and I purposely focused just on Washington, D.C., so you could see how much vandalism the left is a part of and approved over the last few years. But this is a nationwide epidemic by these radicals on the left. Let's look at the actual numbers across the country over the last 6 years. Folks, there have been over 300 historic monuments vandalized, toppled, decapitated, forcibly removed by progressive political pressure since 2020. Just 6 years. That's over 300 monuments and statues that were representative of the American history of this great country. And because it hurt a couple of feelings, people pulled them down, painted them, tore them up, or even removed them. Some of the politicians did. We have over 160 historical markers, not just Confederate figures, but statues of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and local founders torn down, spray painted, set on fire. Nobody sees a problem with this on the left. Nobody spoke out against all of this vandalism and all this idiocy. There's also over 70 Columbus and Explorer statues that were beheaded in Boston, thrown into a lake in Michigan, pulled down by ropes in Minnesota and California. And of course, we cannot forget abolitionists and Union heroes. Statues of Ulysses S. Grant in San Francisco, Hans Christian Heg in Wisconsin, and the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, which, by the way, was the Black Union Regiment in Boston, all defaced by left-wing mobs. But please tell me more about how a clean blue reflecting pond in Washington is hurtful to you. It must be exhausting to hyperventilate over a pristine coat of paint while actively pretending that 300 smoldering, decapitated monuments across the country were just creative community remodeling. I gotta repeat that number. 300 across the country. And the left's okay with this. They're crying about the color of paint in a pool, and they're crying about something that's happening on the White House lawn, that in 2 weeks, everything will be restored back to normal and it'll look just like it did a month ago. But hey, let's tear up 300 historic monuments across this great country that our kids should be learning more about in school, but they're not. So that was the only link to history, to actual history. And you want to destroy it or remove it all. Again, more than 300 monuments across this country have been attacked. And it wasn't conservative truck guys or Second Amendment advocates, which is supposed to be all Christians or whatever the number one terroristic threat according to Biden was. No, it wasn't any of those guys. It was radical leftists and Antifa cells and progressive activist groups. No one said anything about it. They didn't just go after the Confederacy either. That was their Trojan horse here. They acted like this was about the Confederacy. They tried to tie this to George Floyd and say, we're going after anything Confederacy related. That was a lie. Again, a Trojan horse. They went after George Washington in Portland. They tore down Thomas Jefferson. They even tore down Ulysses S. Grant, the man who literally led the Union Army to defeat the Confederacy. They tore that down. They decapitated Christopher Columbus. Of course, they've always hated that. They even vandalized a monument to the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. Again, the historic all-black Union Regiment. Part of the problem is they're stupid. Like, maybe if they knew the history of this black regiment, maybe they wouldn't have tried to tear it down. Maybe not, because I don't think they have any kind of care or any kind of a semblance of decency about them. But maybe if they were at least remotely educated, somebody in the back might have said, hey, those were our people. This statue is celebrating our people. But no, nobody did. They went on to attack it. How stupid. They don't care about history. They care about destruction. So let me bring us back to today. So when you see some talking head on television crying tears over the UFC event near the White House today, or acting like a clean, bright blue lining in the Lincoln reflecting pool is some national tragedy, remember what they tolerated. Remember what they excused. They excused arson. They excused mob rule. They excused the literal tearing down of American history by mass radicals with ropes and flammable liquids. Notice the pattern here. The outrage isn't about preserving monuments or public spaces. Never was. It's never been about that. That's what they say on camera and in their headlines. It's never been about that. It's about whether the people making changes to those spaces share the mainstream media's politics. If radical leftists vandalize history in the name of the latest leftist fashionable cause or issue to be upset about, we're told to understand the context of the vandalism. Like we're supposed to somehow listen to their explanation and agree to it. But if we restore, improve, or repurpose public spaces in ways the radical left dislikes, suddenly we're lectured about sacred norms. Look, they don't care about the sanctity of Washington, D.C. It's all about control. It always has been. They want to control the narrative. They want to control what history you're allowed to see. And they hate the fact that this administration is putting American pride back into our national landmarks. Folks, don't let them gaslight you. The data doesn't lie, and the timeline certainly doesn't lie. We aren't going to let them forget. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm curious what you guys think. I'm guided by fairness. I have a moral compass that expects everybody to treat everybody the same way. You start disrespecting me, I'm sorry, I'm going to disrespect you back. I don't turn the other cheek. I'm just not built that way. But I can be really nice if you're nice to me, and very, very respectful. So when I see this type of hypocrisy where they're totally silent whenever they're ripping down national monuments all over the country, but we want to paint the bottom of a swimming pool and they frickin' lose their minds, that drives me insane, folks. Tell me what you think. Am I overreacting to this? Let me know in the comment section down below. Guys, if you don't mind, please make sure you are subscribed to Legally Owned America here. Like the video, share it if you can, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget, guys, if you're looking for a book to educate yourself and to educate the idiots out there who can't think for themselves regarding mass shootings, go to damnliars.net. Again, damnliars.net, and get my brand new book, Damn Liars.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
It's hanging around.